Hockey, a sport overshadowed in the United States by the likes of basketball, baseball, and football, has finally started to gain more and more popularity. And in light of this new wave of young Americans in the NHL, like Austin Matthews here, in the fast-growing fan base, one topic still remains heavily debated, and that's fighting. Now, to those who don't know the NHL very well, to regular people, one thing comes to mind very often, and that's fighting. I have loved and played hockey since my childhood, and I was always curious on the real reason behind the fighting and what enforcers actually do. They can't be out here just beating up on people all the time purely based on hatred. And so enforcers and fighting are by nature a huge part of the game, in and out of the locker room. So to start off with, I want to dive into how people nowadays portray and view these enforcers, or goons as some people call them. And with debates on fighting and big hits recently, I wanted to delve into how a normal person can view this game and its violence, actually. The movie Goon has really captured that part of the game, but at the same time really dramatized it. And in this movie, there's an enforcer who just beats up other people and sucks at every skill-based aspect of the game. And what this does is overdo the violent parts of the game and shines a bad light on it. However, most of this portrayal is false. The changing rules and nature of the game has decreased the relevancy of fighting. According to Greg Wyshynski from ESPN, the average number of fights per game went down from 0.56 to 0.22 in the last few years or so. And that's a lot. It might not seem like it, but it's a lot. And that's the percentage of fights back then were 38%. So 38% of NHL games had a fight in the 2000 to 2001 season, meaning you had a 1 in 3 chance of seeing a fight break out if you went to a game. And there was an old saying that people used to say, I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. So in reality, these enforcers bring so much to the locker room in games that no one really pays attention to. And although fights have statistically gone down, I'm sorry, here we go. Here's a fight and a graph for the fights, like I said, from 0.56 down to 0.22. So in reality, the enforcers bring so much to the locker room in games that no one really shines a light on. And although fights have statistically gone down, these enforcers are needed to take on a persona that the teams need to succeed. And while seemingly aggressive, these men do whatever it takes to achieve their dreams of becoming an NHLer, and often go to lengths that others may look down upon. And while, yes, the declining of fighting can be considered a good thing, as Brian Burke states from USA Hockey, there is no chance that the role or amount of fighting will increase. And he says that's a good thing. And we can't ignore the dangers of the game, obviously, and that's why they deserve this state-of-the-art treatments and facilities. And the NHL has been a leader in that area for all pro sports. But there is a history and a dedication behind it all. Fighting is there for regulation, believe it or not. And for players who break the rules, they are then held accountable by others. And fighting keeps the incidence of injuries and illegal hits to a minimum. And it's not the best system for overall safety, obviously, but it's the one that has been implemented and used for 100 years, and it works. And for the people who choose to fight, for those who choose to protect the others, they're all volunteers. They do this because they love the game. And while the changing environment of the game is pushing enforcers out of it, there will always be those who will continue to do this because they have that NHL dream. They have that dream to make the pro leagues. And the documentary Ice Guardians really sums up the essence and grit of these men, in my opinion. For them, they all come to a point where their skill set will only take them so far, according to retired NHLer Lyndon Byers. And he says that the game is beautiful, elegant, but it can also be nasty. And if you don't have people that can hold others accountable, they're going to take those liberties because they can. And in terms of strategies, these enforcers are there to create room to make plays for those like Crosby, McDavid, or Ovechkin, those skilled players who can go out there and score goals and win games. Because ultimately, this is a game with no out of bounds, and people are constantly getting physical because there's really no way to escape that. And it's apparent that due to fighting being a systematic thing instead of something in football or NBA in which fights are not allowed, the fights that do happen are not out of hatred. You have people saying to their opponents, good luck, or good job, things that you don't really think about when it comes to fighting. And because of that, there's a code. There's somewhat of a fighting code. It's not written, but it's out there, and the hockey players know this. And it's made out of respect for each other and the game. Howard Bloom states that you don't know it until you step into the dressing room and interview one of these guys. You think that this guy's a monster, that he's merciless and he's a cockroach to the game. And then you sit down with him and discover that he has the most magnificent set of ethics and morals you have ever seen in your life. And the enforcer calls on profound loyalty, so deep that he's willing to risk his own body, his bones, and his brain on behalf of protecting the ones that he loves. And those are his teammates. And so these enforcers are viewed very negatively. With all news out there on CTE and injuries and people calling out for fighting to be taken out, but research shows that only about 5% of concussions are from fighting. And most of the time you can't pinpoint the exact hit or event that creates a concussion, which is why it's easy to attack fighting as a cause. People should understand that they shouldn't change something they don't know anything about, and that these players continuously vote to keep fighting in. And in the end, they are the ones who are risking their bodies in the game. So, to wrap it up, fighting has been and may continue to be a regulator for violence within the game. And although the amount has gone down tremendously, there is no debate that it's a staple in the game. Enforcers bring about peer accountability, and that keeps a stable NHL. The first line of defense against players crossing the line is other players. Not only that, these enforcers are out there fighting for a dream, the NHL dream, caring more not for themselves but for their teammates. And as kids, they wanted nothing more but to become a hockey player, and here they are in the big leagues, but with their sacrifice becoming sadly misunderstood.